Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here, and today, a team of up to 4 resourceful survivors face off against a single supernatural killer in a high-stakes game of cat and mouse. Survivors will explore the trial grounds, discover props, utilize unique abilities known as perks, as you work to uncover and repair generators, because repairing 4 generators and opening the exit to escape is how they win. But the killer will be hunting down the survivors, wounding them, and placing them on sacrificial hooks to summon a sinister force. Dead by Daylight is for 3 to 5 players, takes 30 to 60 minutes to play, is published by Level 99 Games. Dead by Daylight recently completed a successful Kickstarter campaign, but late pledges are currently open. So let me show you how this works, and I'll see you on the other side. This is a preview video, and this is a prototype copy, so all of the components and artwork are not final. To see all the most up-to-date artwork and components, check the link in the description of this video. Now, up to 4 players are going to be playing as survivors, and each of them will be able to choose which one they want to be. Now, each of the survivors do have a difficulty level. On your first game, you'd want to pick one that says easy. Now, each of these are also going to have 3 unique perks, which are essentially special abilities for that survivor. And here's a few others that you can select from. Now, even though all of the other players are going to be survivors, one other player that's not a survivor is going to be playing as the killer. And the killer gets to select which one they are this game as well. And again, if it's your first game, it's best to play with one on a difficulty that is easy. They all have perks as well. We'll go over some of these later. And here's a few other killers that player can select from. Now here's the board setup. There's actually multiple boards that you can select from. And here I actually have the 4 different survivors. They start in a random spot depending on what die they rolled. And then here is the killer, which is the nurse, and they just started where they rolled die as well. It's possible that players and or killers start in the same spot. Now over the course of the game, both the survivors and the killer are going to be interacting with different prop tokens of different types, like objectives, boldness, survival, or altruism. Those are the 4 different types, but there's different tokens within each type. And over the course of the game, you're going to be flipping tokens and you're going to be interacting with them. Like for example, this is a generator. It looks like this. Now over the course of the game, how the survivors win is they're going to be trying to interact with these generators, and they're going to be making skill checks with dice, and if they're successful, they're going to be placing progress markers on those generators. And if they get 3 progress tokens on them, this generator's fixed, and it's going to go up in the upper part of the board. And the survivors are trying to get all 4 generators powered up. Then they got to find the exit, and then get some successes there as well to win. But the killer's going to be moving around, messing with the survivors, and possibly being able to interact with the generators as well, removing the progress, of course. Now, the killer is going to be moving around, attacking the survivors, making them wounded with this marker, and then, in a subsequent round, bringing that wounded person to a hook to sacrifice them on there, because at the end of each of the rounds, for every survivor that's on a hook, they will add one of those to here, and if they get to 8 hooks, then they are the winner. The first time any survivor is sacrificed, you add the hook token from their board to the progress track. And at the end of the round, an additional token is placed from the supply to the progress track for each survivor still sacrificed. So the game is played over multiple rounds until one of those victory conditions happens, and each round is going to go through 4 different phases: planning, survivors, killer, and cleanup. Now during the planning phase, all of the survivors are going to pick one of their movement cards and secretly select it and place it face down. Now, they can talk with each other, but it can't be in secret. They have to say it aloud so that the killer can hear what their plans are. And in the planning phase, the killer actually gets to select 2 cards, and they have to specify left and right which one's going to happen first and which one's going to happen second. Then starting with the start player and going clockwise, all of the survivors are going to take turns. So they're going to flip over the card they selected, and they're going to move. In this case, it's green and says sprint. So this player is going to come over here because it has the green sprint. They can come here, and now they are in the cold tower upper floor. Then, if there are still any face down tokens like they are, they can flip one up. And after that, they can interact with any face up token. Now I moved over there, and you might think, well, that's a little bit dangerous. Because you might say, wait, the killer's right there. They might be able to go up here. Well, not really, because the yellow ones have a directional. Like this one, you can only drop down to here. You can't climb up here. So it's pretty safe right now because the killer's way down here, and they're actually pretty far away from me. Now this is a locker, and if I choose to, I can basically be hiding in that locker. Now why would I want to do that? Well, because let's say the killer was in this room with me. If they are, they can just simply attack me, and then we'd get a wounded token. Then, in a subsequent round, the killer can try to take me over to another spot and try to sacrifice me on a hook. Let's say this one was revealed earlier, and let's say this one was a hook. We're only one room away. Now keep in mind that the killer's not going to move or do anything until all the survivors have moved and interacted. But let's just say this was it. Now, and let's say I was already wounded. The killer is going to force me to do a skill check with a die. Now, a great success is a 5, and they can basically force me to roll a certain amount of dice. In this case, this is only 1 away from them, so they're going to just have me roll 1 die, and if it's anything other than this great success, they're going to take me over to here, and they're going to sacrifice me right on that hook, again, giving them 1/8 of the way there at the end of the round, because for each human survivor that's sacrificed on a hook, they get one of those hooks at the end of the round. But instead, if I was not there, but I was in the locker, then this killer will force me to do a skill check. Now, most of the time it's good, but once in a while you might roll a failure. And not only is that bad, it's also going to give the killer a blood point, which is going to allow them to activate some powerful abilities. Now, if they're successful on this, then the locker is just simply removed. The killer just damaged the locker and you kind of get out. But if you fail in the locker, they're basically going to pick you up even if you aren't wounded. So it's a little bit more risky if you roll the bad failure, but it gives you a little bit of safety if you're not. Sometimes you might be interacting with the generators, and again, if you have a success, then you're going to be placing a progress token on there. If you get 3 of them, it'll move up to the top of the board there, and you'll be able to start getting one of the 4 generators completed that you need to then go find the exits. Instead, you might find a chest, and the chest is going to allow you to get the top card of an item deck. Now you're only drawing 1 of these, but I've placed a few of mine here just to show you what some of these do. Like the first aid kit can remove a wound from you or somebody else in your space. The toolbox, basically you can add a progress token to one of the generators. That's great, because remember 3 of those fixes the generator up. The broken key, you can discard at any time to allow any survivor to re-roll, which is great because sometimes it was a failure, you want it to be a success, or they can gain a blood point, which we'll talk about later, is you can activate some of these perks using those. Or maybe you discard this during the killer's turn to prevent them in your space from interacting. And when you select one, it goes here in your item spot, and you can only hold 1. If you get another one, you can discard that one and put the new one in there. Or maybe you have a pallet that you want to interact with, and you can place it on a path adjacent to the room you're in. Now pallets, the survivors can go past them, but the killers cannot, for example. Now in order for the killers to get past here, they have to basically spend the same type of movement that they normally would to move into here, but by doing that, they destroy the pallet, but they don't get to move into there or interact that turn. Maybe this survivor moved into the mine entrance and they want to interact with the crow. Well, the crow gains the killer a blood point, which is really good for activating abilities, but it allows them to take a bonus turn. So maybe they'll be able to play another card, go into another room, get further away from there, interact with something else, for example. Or maybe they want to interact with a hex totem where they do a skill check, and on success, they'll remove that and they'll gain 2 blood points. Now the survivors start with 2 of these. You have a max count of 6, and there's different effects throughout the game that will allow you to get some more of those. But on your board are printed different blood points there, and on your turn, once per round you can do each one. So you can't do this twice in the same round, for example. You could spend, in this case, 1 and do any or all of these in a single round. Like, for example, you inspire others around you with positive peer pressure, and then when you would interact, another survivor in your space or connected space can interact instead. Or you can activate leader, which means when another survivor in your space moves, you can move with them. Or when you move, another survivor with you can move with you. Or you can use bond, where another survivor in your space or connected would make a skill check. You roll 2 skill check dice and keep the result instead. So giving you a little bit of different, easier ways to get successes there. And each of the different survivors have different perks on their board. And also, just so you know, on the back of the player boards that aren't being used are basically a big player aid of what happens when you interact with all of the different tokens. And there's ones on the back for the killer as well, because they interact with things differently, usually in the opposite way that the survivors interact with them. Now the survivors can also interact with these hooks, and they can place an entity token on them, making them unavailable for 1 round, and at the end of the round, the entity token's removed. Now remember, the killer is trying to bring wounded survivors to the hook and hang them on there for a sacrifice, because remember, for every survivor that's on a hook at the end of the round, they're going to gain 1 of those progress tokens, and 8, and they'll win the game. Now if a survivor's on the hook, they are basically not able to do anything on their turn until they've been rescued. Now if another survivor comes in here, they can interact with that hook and rescue them off of it. And then you and the rescued one can move along any path to get out of there, and you're going to get a blood point as well. And an entity token gets placed on that hook, making it unavailable for the rest of the round. Now there's also breakable walls in certain spots, and the survivors can't move through them, but when the killer moves through them, he breaks the wall, now making it open to anybody to get through. Now once all of the survivors in turn order have revealed their card, moved, interacted, done things like that, it's going to be the killer's turn. So the killer is then going to flip over their first card, move and interact, and they have a special card called Wait, which is kind of like, hey, I'm not moving because I know that it's kind of putting you in a tough spot there. Now they can interact with things as I showed you before. They can also interact with other survivors as attacking them and trying to move them onto the hook that I've already shown you. But instead of interacting, they can use their power once per round. And this ability is, earlier I showed you, I thought I was safe because they could only go one direction up those yellow paths, but the special ability here is you can also move against one-way paths. So I really wasn't safe, but I didn't want to show that to you here. So you really got to pay attention to which killer you're going against. They can also move to any connected space, ignoring pallets and breakable walls as well. And they also have perks as well, like the Strider, where at the start of the planning phase, if there's a wounded survivor, they have to play their movement card face up, so they get to see what they're doing and plan against that. Or maybe they use this, which forces them to use a danger die when doing a skill check, which has many more failures on there. This one is free. After survivor becomes healthy, you gain 2 blood points. Again, that's what's used to activate some of these. Now at the end of the killer's second turn, they can spend 4 blood points to set a third movement card and then proceed to take a third turn. But they can only take 1 bonus turn per round. But after they're done with their turns, we then go to cleanup, where we're going to see how many survivors are sacrificed on hooks. For everyone that's there, you're going to place one here, and if this gets to 8, then the killer has won the game. But again, the survivors are trying to fix all 4 generators, then find the exit. Now they can only interact with the exits once they have all 4 generators powered up. And again, they can place a progress token with a good skill check, and once it gets 3 of those, then they have opened the gates and they've won the game. Now there's also different game modes. You can play with Blood Web, which is the beginning of the game. Each player is going to draw 5 of these types of perk cards. Here's 6 of them. And from those, they can place up to 3 of them onto the printed perks on their board, replacing those. But they have the option of replacing or not any of the printed ones on the board with the card selected. But keep in mind that the killer has their own deck of perks that they'll be drafting from as well. You can also play Devout Mode, where the players select any 3 perks to replace their printed ones on the board. You can have more than one of the same type, but this is for expert players. And if you're playing a 3 or 4 player game, in 4 players, 1 survivor must control 2 survivors, and in 3 player games, both survivors control 2 survivors each. And in a nutshell, that's how you play Dead by Daylight. Well, there you have Dead by Daylight, and as I showed in the overview, it's a one versus many game of cat and mouse that provides a tense experience, keeping you on the edge of your seat. Now, Dead by Daylight recently completed a successful Kickstarter campaign, but late pledges are currently open right now, and you can click the link below me to see all of those details, and I'm sure that Level 99 Games would love your support.